What's good, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. The end of drill. I don't even think I said my intro yet, but what's good, YouTube? Yeah. You know, you watch Shit with AJ. You know, if you didn't get what my name stood for, you watching Shit with AJ. Then story of Chicago drill. Shout out New School Stories. Man, about the end of drill thing, bro. I don't think we've seen the end of drill yet. But I don't know if like Lil Durk died or shit, that's gonna really hurt the motherfucking drill. Like G Herbo died, like, you know. But yeah, man, go check out all the recents, bro. I just dropped a day in the life of King Yella, FPG Duck, and then the T Roy V Roy story will be out right when you see this video. It will be out, so go check that shit out, man.
Chicago's South Side. These streets are home to some of the most dangerous gangs in America. Last year, there were more murders here than in any other city in the United States.
What I be rapping about, we don't be lying about this.
You rapping about what's living out there, also. The deeper rap, really.
What you
Right.
call that movie?
So we call it drill music.
Okay. Drill music. Okay, cool,
Drill
cool.
Like how you all hyped up and just
No doubt.
ready to go crazy.
A lot of niggas do this
Damn,
shit.
you ain't even add the funniest part, bro.
YouTube views and all this shit. We trying to eat, we got killers to
Real,
feed.
man. Body's dropping.
Chicago drill has had a bigger impact on gangster rap and street culture in general than anything else in the last quarter century. For better or worse, a lot of the trends across hip-hop in the present day originate from this time period. From firearms and videos to dissing the dead and putting ops in blunts, Chicago took gangster rap to the extreme and basically erased the line between entertainment and reality. A grassroots movement that started in the trenches of the south side of Chicago.
Long live Young Pappy, man. Oh god, bro. That video right there, oh, man. I don't remember none of the lyrics except the ambulance pick his ass up. But no, that shit fire.
Took off by itself with only the help of the internet and blew up into the mainstream, traveling everywhere across the country and even overseas. Generational stars emerged and grew to be icons. The streets and gang culture was broadcasted for anyone with the internet connection to observe, and nothing would ever be the same. So in this video, we'll take a look at the story of Chicago drill. Early 10s, but the sound that would end up making its way into Chicago to become drill started in Atlanta in the late 2000s. In the years leading up to this time period, Gucci, Jeezy, and T.I. had popularized trap music. In the late 2000s, the popularization of FL Studio was changing the way beats were made and allowing producers to program hi-hats and snare rolls faster than it was possible to play by hand. And as the years went by, these techniques would become more and more popular. Melodies were also changing. While early trap beats were based on sampling older records, towards the late 2000s, more producers were starting to make melodies from scratch, and orchestral sounds like strings or horns were gaining popularity. Around this time, up in Chicago, the music scene was relatively quiet. Bump J had seen some success, but he had recently been sentenced for a robbery. But although the city was quiet, there was one important name as far as the legacy of drill is concerned, and it was Pac-Man Joe. This was the rapper who popularized the term drill, and some even credit him to be the inventor of drill music. He started rapping around the late 2000s, but unfortunately was killed in 2010 before he could really take off. However, around the same time, other drill pioneers were beginning their careers as well. So the term drill had been popularized and some of the themes of drill music were making their way into songs. but the music being made wasn't drill music because Chicago still didn't have a unified sound, but this was about to change. In 2010, Waka Flocka blew up with Flockavelli, and this album had a unique style of production. The majority of songs were produced by a young producer named Lex Luger. Lex had created his own unique version of the late 2000s trap sound. He had spins 808s, programmed hi-hat and snare rolls, strings and horns, but his beats were darker and more aggressive and stood out from other trap beats of this style. Waka blew up, taking his style to the mainstream, and Ace Hood also started working with Lex and using this new style. The sound worked great for these artists, but it was perfect for Chicago. A rapper from the same hood as Pac-Man drove called King Louie was the first to incorporate it into his music. In January of 2011, Louie dropped his debut mixtape, Man Up, Band Up, with lyrics about Chicago street life and plenty of references to the newly popularized term drill, combined with Lex Luger-inspired beats, and this was basically the birth of drill music. Around this time, Louie was one of the biggest artists in Chicago, and him being the first to start rapping on the drill sound definitely helped to popularize it in the city, but the sound is only part of what makes drill drill. One of the key ingredients of drill is dissing, and this also started around 2011. Now, since the 1920s, Chicago has been a city of gangs, and the tradition never died. However, in the early 10s, these gangs were suffering the effects of a lack of leadership. All of the major gang leaders had been locked up throughout the 90s and early 2000s, causing basically every gang to lose their structure. $1 million operations had devolved into kids running around with poles doing drills on each other. The late 2000s was also the start of one of the dumbest trends to ever hit the streets. Rival gangs decided to take their beef digital and gangbang through the internet on websites like Facebook and MySpace. Around 2011, these beefs also began to include diss songs on YouTube. In order to understand the context of early drill music, you have to...
Is E-Day reacting to his ops fucking diss? I don't know. Cause I seen this one video where Lil J being a professional hater, bro. He was watching Sosa. That might be what E-Day doing too. You might be being a professional hater too. But, you know, I don't know.
To know who was involved. The disses being traded back and forth involved two main sides. There was 300, which included O-Block, the home of Chief Keef and Fredo Santana, and Lamron, the home of...
I thought he was from 600. I don't know where the fuck Fredo from. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Lil Durk and Lil Reese. 300 was allied with the hood called 600, which was the home of rappers like E-Day, L.A. Capone, and Rondo Number 9. And together, 300 and 600 were beefing with several hoods. But the main one, as far as music was concerned, was STL, home to rappers like FBG Duck and Lil J. The main rappers who kicked off this trend were E-Day, FBG Duck, and Billionaire Black. The music video for an early E-Day song called The Ops shows E-Day watching a Billionaire Black and FBG music video and then responding. And this is pretty much how things went. These rappers would trade disses and talk about what they would do whenever they saw each other. And they just went back and forth song for song. Around this same time, Lil Durk was also starting his career, but he wasn't heavy into the new drill wave yet, and his music was closer to late 2000s Lil Wayne. By late 2011, the dissing had progressed, and what had started as more battle rap styles of disses and threats of violence in the early months of the year had progressed into disrespecting the dead in a matter of months. In October of 2011, Chief Keef dropped a mixtape called Bang, which was his third mixtape, but his first on the new drill wave. He almost exclusively had the new Lex Luger style of beats, and he started the mixtape off by dissing a dead op named Shondell, aka Tuka, who had died January of that year. Tuka was a well-loved member of STL, and dissing him would grow into a big trend over the years. The whole Bang mixtape was hard, and it was the beginning of Chief Keef's prime. He went from relatively unknown to buzzing in the city. The rest of 2011, Chief Keef, E-Day, and several other rappers from their hoods continued to beef with Billionaire Black and FBG Duck over tracks. 2011 was also the year several other 300 and 600 affiliates started rapping, like Lil Reese, Fredo Santana, ST, and S. Dot. 2011 was the birth year of drill music, but 2012 was the year the world would be introduced to this new form of trap. By 2012, the sound Chicago had borrowed from Waka Flocka and Atlanta was starting to evolve more into the distinct Chicago drill sound known across the world today. And a producer who played a big part in this was Young Chop. Young Chop and Chief Keef started working together in 2011, but 2012 was the year they would take over. In March of 2012, Chief Keef dropped a song called Don't Like, and it went viral. It was an early case of a song spreading organically through the internet without any promotion or major label backing it. The song went everywhere, and it got even bigger when Kanye hopped on the track to make a remix with Jadakiss, Big Sean, and Pusha T. 6 months later, Keef followed this up with Love Sosa, which went on to see even more success, and in December, he dropped his debut album, Finally Rich. The whole 2012, Chief Keef was elevating to become one of the biggest stars in rap, and his rise put a spotlight on the entire city that many artists would end up benefiting off for years to come. Lil Durk, who had already established himself before Keef blew, began to see even more shine, and it was during this year that he dropped his iconic track, L's Anthem. Fredo Santana and Lil Reese also found themselves with plenty of new fans, and as a result began taking their careers more seriously and dropping more music. Other 300 and 600 associates saw boosts in their career, and Ops of 300 and 600 did as well. FBG Duck and Billionaire Black continued trading diss songs with their 300 and 600 rivals, and more fans were tuning in. 2012 was also the year another FBG member named Lil J started rapping and joined alongside his fellow members, and in the future, he would become one of the biggest voices on his side. This same year, another beef made its way into the music. These days, Lil Durk is known for constantly dissing, but up until 2012, he actually wasn't dissing his ops, and anything he said was general. He wasn't mentioning specific people or gangs he was beefing with. But all this changed when he dropped L's Anthem, and dissed two of Lamron's biggest rival hoods called Brick Squad and Wickerell. The song blew up and made it all the way to the radio, and one of Lil Durk's ops ended up hearing it and wasn't a fan. A kid named Lil Jojo, who was a member of Brick Squad, decided to respond with a diss aimed at the whole 300 called 300K. This added more fuel into the fire of the Battle of Drill that had started in 2011 and united all the hoods beefing with 300 and 600, but unfortunately, Jojo didn't live long enough to see the benefits, and in September of 2012, his life was taken. It was also around this time that the trend of smoking dead ops was created. The GDs and STL had started it as a form of respect to one of their fallen members and said that they were smoking Tuka to honor him, but their ops flipped the expression and used the phrase smoking Tuka to mock them, and this was the beginning of smoking dead ops. This was what was happening on the south side in 2012, but over on the east side, other drill pioneers were beginning to take off. Lil Herb and Lil Baby were dropping their first songs on YouTube, including remixes of popular beats at the time like I'm a Boss by Rick Ross and Money Over Here by Jeezy. In April, Herb dropped a song called Gangway that gained some traction in the city. Herb already knew Reese from before rap and was able to get him on the remix, and this was a huge look for Herb at the time because Reese was one of the hottest artists in the city, so getting him on a remix of an already popular song brought a lot of attention to Lil Herb. Around this same time, in August of 2012, Lil Herb and Lil Baby teamed up on a song called Kill Sh*, which blew up and became an early drill classic. Alongside these two rappers was a producer named DJ L, who would play a big part in developing the drill sound in Chicago, and he would also end up fathering the entire UK drill sound. Herb and Baby still had a ways to go to reach the level of success some of the guys in 300 were seeing, but 2012 was a strong start for them. With drill taking off and creating a strong movement in the city, a lot of fans wanted to hear directly from their favorite rappers, and they needed someone from the city who knew what was going on to interview the rappers and ask the right questions. Zach TV saw this need and fulfilled it. He was
long live Zach TV, man.
ahead of his time. Since 2011, he had been filming hood vlogs and in 2012, he decided to start interviewing the popular rappers in the city.
Who that?
One of his earliest
D-Thing?
interviews was with Chief Keef at the
Oh,
start of
D-Thing, man.
2012 before he dropped Don't Like and blew up. He also has one of Lil Durk's earliest interviews back when he still had his first set of dreads. As the drill movement continued, Zach TV would end up interviewing basically every up-and-coming rapper in the drill movement, and he didn't pick sides or play politics. He interviewed everybody, and the whole city loved him. Zach TV, along with Say Cheese, would set the foundation for many of today's media figures like Adam 22, Camp Capone, and 16 Shot 'em. So 2012 was the year that put drill on the map, and 2013 continued this momentum. Chief Keef was still at the top, but he was barely even making drill. He was experimenting with more mainstream melodic trap sounding songs. On the drill scene, Lil Durk was going crazy. He dropped This Ain't What You Want, which blew up and became the biggest hit of his career up to that point.
Yeah,
And
that's
basically
fire.
everything he was dropping was doing numbers. Reese was also super hot during this time and doing big numbers alongside Durk. Pretty much all the drill rappers from the previous 2 years were doing well, and the movement was strong. 2013 was also a year where new faces emerged into the scene. L.A. Capone and Rondo Number 9 were two of the younger guys in 600. Rondo had been making music as early as 2011, but he was awful at first, and to this day there are still people crowning him on his Diel's freestyle.
YouTube Music Premium is an experience.
Hey, I'm glad you played it, but no, Rondo's still awful. I ain't gonna lie.
LA started around the end of 2012, but by 2013, both of these rappers were making noise and had songs going viral like Murder, Play for Keeps, and Shooters. Lil Durk was rocking with them heavy and taking them under his wing. It looked like they had the potential to become stars, especially LA. Unfortunately, the consequences of life in the streets would end up catching up with both of these artists before they could reach their potential. In September of 2013, LA was caught by ops walking home from the studio and ended up losing his life. Then, 5 months later, Rondo was arrested and booked for a body in a case that would eventually result in him getting 39 years. This was a bad break for 600 because they had lost 2 future stars in a matter of months. Over on the east side, Bibby and Herb had another big year. Lil Bibby was dropping throughout the year, and in November he dropped his debut mixtape, Free Crack, which was a great project all around and featured his hit song, Water. Lil Herb was dropping songs and freestyles the whole year, preparing to drop his debut mixtape, Welcome to Fezzoland, in 2014. 2013 had been a big year for all the drill rappers in Chicago, but in 2014 things were about to get even bigger. Lil Herb started the year out strong, dropping his highly anticipated mixtape, Welcome to Fezzoland. Then in April, he got a huge look when Nicki Minaj reached out to feature him on a song called Chirac. The song was big and got Herb's name out there to a lot of new fans, but the beat was legendary. Chirac was one of those beats that everybody jumps on, but 2 remixes stood out in particular. The first was a Meek Mill remix featuring Lil Durk and Shy Glizzy, and the second was by a rapper called Montana 300. Montana 300 had been rapping since 2009 and throughout the whole drill movement, but his Chirac remix was his opportunity to blow. He snapped and made hands down one of the hardest songs ever. His remix outshined everyone, including the original version, and got millions of views, as well as put Montana 300's name out into the hip-hop world. Despite everything going on, Chief Keef was still the hottest drill rapper in the city. Throughout most of 2013, he had been on a completely different vibe, but Lil J had continued to diss him on several songs throughout the year, and Keef hadn't responded, but in 2014, he decided to get back into his 2011-2012 drill bag. He started the year dropping a super disrespectful song called War, which was Chief Keef back on the drill beat with super disrespectful lyrics dissing Tuka and several other dead ops. He continued dropping drill songs, smoking Tuka, and dissing his ops, as well as taking occasional shots at them on social media. 2014 was also the year Keef and Durk fell out, and Boss Top ended up breaking into his house. There was a lot going on this year in Chicago, which was nothing new, but there were more eyes than ever, and the fans wanted to know everything. DJ Academic stumbled onto this realization by accident. Around this time, he was covering everything in hip-hop, but every time he would drop a video covering Chicago, it would do more numbers than his other videos. And he also noticed people commenting saying he wasn't covering the full story because his videos were focused around a poppin' rapper at the time, and he wouldn't really mention their opposition. Academics saw the potential to start a second channel specifically for Chicago, and he made one called The War in Chirac. Since the late 2000s, where Chicago gang members had the bright idea to gangbang on the internet, the trend of talking about real street events on social media had only been growing, and literally anybody could go on these websites and have a good idea of what was going on, and this is exactly what Academics did. He covered all the shootings and other craziness that was happening in Iraq, from his mom's basement all the way in New Jersey. Academics' style of gathering information on social media and reporting on it was completely new and unheard of at the time, but it would change the hip-hop community on YouTube forever. Similar accounts like College Kid were doing the same thing, and over the years people started going beyond current topics and researching old street history and making long-form content on it. Academics paved the way for an entirely new lane of hip-hop reporting and laid the foundation for people like Trap Geek, Trap Lord Ross, and Swamp Stories, and it basically all started in 2014. So this was a year in which several new media figures covering Chicago were starting to emerge, and new faces in the rap scene were as well. Tay 600 and 600 Breezy both started rapping to honor their fallen homie L.A. Capone, and they both saw a decent amount of success early on, but things went left for Tay when he was accused of snitching on Rondo and C-Day, and basically the whole 600 and 300 turned their back on him, even though evidence eventually came out proving that he never told. On top of Tay and 600 Breezy, another rapper was blowing up around 2014, one who was outshining everybody. 2014 was the year Young Pappy started to take off. Throughout most of the drill movement, attention was on the south side and the east side, and many saw people from the north side as not really like that. But Pappy changed everything. Young Pappy was a rapper from the north side of Chicago who had started around 2012. He was extremely talented, and his aggressive, angry style of delivery set him apart, and he clearly had star potential. He started buzzing in 2014 from songs like Competition and Boom. Then he dropped his debut mixtape 2 Cups Part 1, and the mixtape showcased his skill and versatility and was well received, with many believing that he was up next. From late 2014 on, he went on a crazy run, dropping banger after banger, including tracks like Killer, Afterlife, Homicide, and his Finito remix. The whole city was taking notice, and Pappy had labels knocking at his door and was on pace to be a star. He dropped 2 Cups Part 2 in May, which to this day is one of the best mixtapes out of Chicago, and things were really taking off. But unfortunately, on May the 30th, Pappy was caught by ops and met a tragic end. This was a big loss, and Pappy's death was the start of the end of drill.
I tried.
Man, every time a fucking ad come on, I just sigh out of, what's the word? I don't even know the word, but I fucking hate ads, though. Come on, bro.
Fortunately, on May the 30th, Pappy was caught by ops and met a tragic end. This was a big loss, and Pappy's death was the start of the end of drill. 2015 was one of the final years of the drill movement in Chicago. Keith, Dirk, and basically everybody in 300 saw their numbers dropping as the fans were moving on. The ops were seeing the same thing as well on a smaller scale. Over on the east side, Lil Bibby was doing good and had the potential to get even bigger, but he lost his interest in being a rapper around this time. The fans were begging for music, but he was dropping less and less, and in a few years he would officially retire and become an executive. Lil Herb was basically the only rapper from 2012 still on an upward trajectory. He was maturing as an artist, and his music was more thoughtful and introspective than in his early days. And he was also moving away from being just a drill rapper. It was also around this time that he changed his name to G Herbo. But drill wasn't completely over yet. C. Huncho was hitting his prime around this time, and Love Foe was heating up and getting ready to go on a crazy run. In 2016, he took off and was almost single-handedly keeping the drill movement alive, dropping bangers like I'm the Man, Coolin' With My Shooters, and Cutting Up. He was getting millions of views and was the hottest rapper in Chicago. 2016 was also the year that Rico Reckless dissed everybody in the city and started getting some attention. Despite G Herbo, Love Foe, and C. Huncho, by 2016, many fans believed that the genre was already dead because Keith, Dirk, Fredo, Reezy, and basically all the OGs were at the bottom of their careers, stuck in record deals with labels that no longer cared about them. 2017 will mark the official end of Chicago drill. G Herbo dropped his debut album Humble Beast, which essentially had no drill songs, solidifying the already known fact that he was much more than a drill artist. Ludfo's wave began to die down, and so did C. Huncho's. Between the last two big drill rappers losing steam and the last relevant pioneer transitioning completely away from the OG drill sound, this basically signaled the end. A movement that stretched all the way back to 2011 was officially over, but its legacy and impact on music has continued to live on throughout the years. The lingo is still present today, and terms like op, thought, and lacking are used across the country. Rappers are still flashing guns in videos, gangbanging through music, smoking dead ops, and practicing all the other questionable trends from this era. And the original drill sound even mutated and came back to the US in the form of New York drill. As far as cities that have had an influence on this era of music, Chicago is up there alongside Atlanta, and nobody else is even close to these two. You can call drill music whatever you want, violent, ignorant, destructive, but you have to admit that it was legendary.
Oh God, it's all of those things, but it is entertaining. It just, stop the violence. Oh God, stop the violence. But that's why I say drill not dead, though. That's why I say drill is not dead, though. Because, people still dissing dead ops. People still, fucking gang banging through music. People still, doing all that type of shit. But the New York should be asked, though, on except D-Thing. Okay, some of his music was cool, but his ass locked up for 20 shootings, allegedly. You feel me? So, hit the like button, go check out all the reasons, bro.